Hi guys, and welcome to our weekly Wednesday window into what models we paint this week in Under the Brush. This week is a little different. In addition to our regular progress update later, I'm also including an overview of how I went about making the Tragedy of McDeath gaming boards I recently finished. As some of you may be aware, we recently finished a 14-part series covering the events and potential events that took place during the second edition Warhammer Fantasy Supplement, The Tragedy of McDeath, by Richard Halliwell et al. The bloody climax of the four scenarios was the battle at Cadtle Runsinane, the seat of power of the usurping King Macbeth. After making some inquiries with the wise Illuminati of the Oldhammer community, I learnt that in the original supplement, players were provided with large A2 sheets upon which floor plans for the entire castle were printed. 2 floors per sheet. I wanted to replay the scenario, having put so much time into reading and writing about it, and I decided to start by making the castle as magnetised MDF gaming boards, and this is how I went about it. I managed to get hold of a PDF version of the floor plans, but I upscaled them as a 3 per floor felt too small, and instead I doubled their size and made them A2. I printed these off and then bought 8 pieces of 5mm thick MDF from the local 100 yen shop. These were just slightly wider than A3, but also slightly shorter, but it was the nearest size that I could find. The next part was to glue the printed floor plans to the MDF. I started with the dungeon. For this, I used slightly watered down white wood glue. I tried a couple of ways of applying it. First to the board and then laying the paper on it, but this tended to cause air to become trapped in places, causing ripples. So, secondly, I tried applying it to the paper. This would cause the paper to curl, but when laid onto the board, it was smoother. The process, though, was a little bit more fiddly. The board size was larger than the paper, so where the MDF itself was exposed, I sprayed it with black undercoat to blend it in, and then, once it was dry, lacquered the top of the boards with artist lacquer that is normally used to protect and preserve 2D traditional paintings. I now had 2 boards for the dungeon of the castle. The final step was to edge the join with some adhesive-backed magnetic tape. I cut a strip the length of the long edge of the boards and then carefully cut it down the centre and glued a strip to each side. As you can see, this nicely locks the 2 pieces in place during play. Next, I repeated the above steps with the other floors. For the ground floor, I cut out around the castle, then painted around the edges of the outer wall with green acrylic paints to represent the edges of the chasm that surrounded the castle, and then black for the chasm itself. For the first floor, I again cut out around the floor plans and filled the outer part with blue sky and some clouds, and the area above the courtyard with a generic sandy colour. For the uppermost floors, I again cut around the floor plans and, after gluing, painted a lighter shade of sky. To paint all of the sky and the grass, I just used simple, cheap acrylic paints from the craft shop, and mostly painted with a kind of stippling motion, mixing and blending as I went straight onto the boards. It was most fun. Anyway, hopefully this gives you some idea for creating your own boards. I've used the same techniques to create a Space Fleet board, if anyone remembers that old gem from Games Workshop.